UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. This is a very special edition of our weekly UFO update. Our guest today, Tim Alberino. We'll get into that and so much more in just a second. My guest today, Tim Alberino. Tim, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're busy, and thanks for taking the time. So let's just jump right into it. For those of viewers who don't know what we're talking about, this went viral. It was last week anyway. I mean, I must have gotten 100 emails, but maybe not that much. But I got a lot of emails from people talking about, the Mexican alien mummies that were found, and Jaime Maussan trotted these things out and opened them up in a very dramatic way. And then these two things. I weighed in on it last week, so I'm not going to repeat that. If you're interested in the show, it's last Wednesday, and you can find it on our YouTube channel if you're here. Just scroll back to next Wednesday. Tim, I know you're on this. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts are that those mummies look fake, and I'm always very cautious with anything that comes out of Mexico, especially Mexico. But Central and South America in general, because there's just a lot of artifacts that are hoaxed and then are peddled to Americans. So my first response is always one of caution. But I can't say definitively whether or not those things are real. Somebody needs to take a knife to one of those things and dissect it and see if it's a composite of different animals.
Right. I had an email from a guy who has to remain anonymous, because he's still working in the field, but he's a radiologist, and he's not in the U.S. And he looked at the X-rays that were shown, and right off the bat, he wrote me. He said, "Oh, hey, this is a construct." He's a radiologist. He knows what he's looking at. That somebody created this thing, and we know from the ferry. This is what I talked about last week. I mean, everybody was fooled on the ferry. Jaime got fooled. The geneticists down there, they got fooled. The veterinarians in Mexico, they got fooled. The veterinarians up here got fooled until we could bring the thing into the country, and then we dissected it and we saw that it was a construct. So like you, I believe that this is another construct. And what bothers me about it, and I want to get your take on this really muddies the waters, because now people go, oh, it's just another fake, the Roswell bodies, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's what really bothers me here. I don't believe that Jaime Maussan intended to display fake alien bodies. I think he really genuinely thinks that they are,
and I do too,
extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Although I did see him today on there's a video going around social media of him arguing with a Peruvian reporter, in which Jaime says he is not saying they're extraterrestrial. Well, if that's the case, then why wheel them out in a serious, in an environment where you have congressmen sitting there, and you had I believe Graves was there. And why wheel these things out? If you're not 100% sure that these things are extraterrestrial, and you're not going to stand by that claim, then don't make a spectacle out of the hearing. And that's what bothers me is this just gives all the naysayers ammunition.
Exactly.
It casts shade on the hearings that happened, and by the way, appeared that we're going to get another one as well here in the United States Congress. And I think it's just, to some extent, it's kind of peeing in the punch bowl.
Yeah, it's a dog and pony show in our Congress. But what do you think when Grush gets up in that whole exchange between Representative Macy and the whistleblower Grush? And by the way, look who's behind Grush. You've got Jeremy Corbell. You can tell he's showing you get about this much of his face, but it's definitely Mr. Corbell, and then
certainly,
Jeremy
and
Corbell,
then
over it's George Knapp. So it's a very controlled narrative by the players who, in my opinion, have been handpicked. But Grush looks right. Remember, he's under oath before the committee, and Macy asks them, "Did they retrieve bodies from the crash?" Yes. Were they human? No, they weren't. They were non-human entities. Well, for those of us that have been in this field, this is nothing new. I've never seen one of the body, but we've heard reports over and over and over again. Your thoughts about when Grush makes that statement?
Certainly. Okay, so I absolutely believe David Grush.
I do too.
I think he is telling the truth. Obviously, Fravor and Graves are also telling the truth.
Sure.
And Grush he feared for his life. That's what people forget, people who say it's just a psyop. He feared for his life. That's the primary reason why he came forth. And I know some of this is true because I've been in conversation with one of the congressmen on the committee, on the UFO committee. And so, and by the way, Ellie, I don't know if you know this, but the driving factor, the driving force behind that committee isn't AOC or some of these other people. The driving force is a group of about 5 or 6 very committed Christians.
Wow.
Those are the people behind the scenes who are driving the committee, which was very encouraging to me to learn. I think that what they're doing is laudable. I absolutely believe the testimony of David Grush. I do not believe it's a psyop. Yeah. And in fact, the frustration from these congressmen, what's been conveyed to me is that the Pentagon is blocking their access to Grush in a skiff. They will not let Grush get in a secure environment to be able to hand them the proof to back up what he's saying, including, as you well know, the locations of these special access programs in these underground bases, the locations where these craft are being harbored and reverse engineered. So that right there, really, because people think that this is the government narrative, they have it all backwards, actually, a lot of people, the people who are pushing the PSYOP narrative, that the government narrative is disclosure. No, it's not. The government narrative is what we saw from NASA the other day. Where there's nothing to see here.
Yeah, deny.
We're interested in anomalous phenomena.
We have no idea what it is.
Nobody wants to talk about what we already know in the field, as you know, as a ufologist, and I know as a ufologist, that of all of the, in my opinion, definitive proof from decades-long research by competent researchers.
And, we've got 6 films on this, with everything from Close Encounters of the First Kind all the way up to women and men that have been abducted since they were 6 years old. So, I know that this phenomenon is real. And then, of course, we have, Chase Klodsky's, she came in on the Watchers series. I know you know Chase, as I do, obviously. And, Chase had that encounter where, she's 6 feet away from a gray, and she's absolutely terrified. Terrified.
That's right.
Speak to that.
Yeah, that's one of the more remarkable stories I've ever heard from a UFO researcher. Right. Chase Klodsky, of course, a first-rate researcher.
Yeah, she is.
And encountered a gray, as you said, face to face, running through a field with other individuals, and it's she'll never say who it was because she is very protective of her sources, as she should be. It's a serious researcher, but it was a famous person. She was over there running through their field because I believe she says a delta-shaped craft suddenly descended over them as they were in this field. And one thing from that story that I find really intriguing is Chase describes it as if an unnatural external terror suddenly comes upon them all at the same
almost
time.
Yeah.
And they all just bolt.
Yeah, and in that testimony, she goes, we all turned at the same time and ran out of the field, terrified. They're being controlled. There's no doubt that they're being
There's no
controlled.
question about it.
Yeah.
And she describes that terror as external. It didn't come from inside of her. It was like it was induced from an outside force. And they took off in different directions. Of course, she I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see it like a playing out like a movie in my head. And she runs, and everybody's running with their flashlights, and she sees the individual whose field it is just standing there, like in shock, looking at something with his flashlight pointed on it.
Yeah.
And she turns to look, and it's a gray.
About 6 feet away.
About
And-
6 feet away.
and
So yeah, and you know, there's stories like this that thousands of stories really, and lots of, by the way, and I'm sure you know, lots of crash retrieval material, lots of crash retrieval stories. The work of Leonard Stringfield, for example, in his status reports, is just chock full of very well researched and sourced crash retrieval stories, in which exactly what Gresh is saying, in which the craft is retrieved by the military and the bodies.
Yeah, I've had people come up to me at conferences, and obviously they can't come on the record. It's secondhand information. I remember this one woman came up and said her father was special forces, whatever. She wouldn't tell me what branch, but some kind of special forces, and they were called in for a crash retrieval, and they went up to the crash. The disc was cracked. They looked at it, and there were bodies in there. I mean, you know, we've heard it. There's too many sources, extra sources that are out there that have come forward or that have, you know, just reported on this. And this is now decades and decades and decades. So, you know, NASA, never a straight answer. A complete dog and pony show. Nothing to see here.
Complete dog and pony show.
Yeah. But we've got David Grush, who says, and he's risking everything. And you know, I'm a student like you. I'm a student of body language. Watching him, he is very earnest, very, very earnest,
And nervous.
nervous. But he makes it really clear that we've got him. We've got biologics.
There's no question.
Tim, I like to keep these interviews pithy and short, just because you know people don't have a lot of time to spend. Like, if someone sends me an interview that goes on for an hour, I just go, I'm sorry, I can't, you know,
Right.
Tell me where I need to look, minute 15, minute 20, whatever, and I'll go there. But I'm not going to watch the whole thing. So where do you think this is going? I call it the rungs of a ladder of disclosure, starting with David Fravor. That's the first rung. But now we're up to rung number 16 with David Grush in that congressional hearing. I don't include the Jaime Maussan debacle last week. That was interesting, but to me, it's not really a rung on the ladder. Where do you think this is going?
I got a gut feeling we're about to get some more whistleblowers from the military and the intelligence community, number one. But where the next level to this is getting whistleblowers from the Defense Department aerospace contractors, the guys who have actually put their hands on the technology, who have actually been employed to reverse engineer it in the various aspects of the reverse engineering programs. We need guys from those quarters to come forth and blow the whistle. In fact, that's what I told the congressman the other day when I was talking to him, is you need to make it clear, not that there's protections in place, not just for people coming from the military and in the government, let's say, but specifically from these aerospace contractors. Put it out there. We want to talk to aerospace contractors. We want to talk to the Lockheed Martin boys, to the Raytheon boys, who've literally been handling the reactors, right? Who've been, and also the biologists who've been handling the bodies.
Yeah.
Come to us. We will protect you. That's what needs to happen. And so I think we're going to get that at some point. And when we do, this thing goes to there's your next rung on your ladder.
Big time, big time. Tim, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And again, I like to keep these short and pithy, and I think that's what we've done. Folks, just so you know, I will be at the Prophecy Watchers Conference that's coming up. There's still, you can get streaming. You can come to the conference. I'll be speaking twice on Friday. Then it's off to Israel. That's our last trip and last conference for the year. And we kind of hunker down. Right now, folks, I've got 5 speaking engagements for next year. We have another 5 that are open, unless, of course, it's in Southern California. Then we'll go anywhere because it's close by. Number 6 is released, a cattle mutilation film, the darkest film I've ever worked on. We are working on 7 and 8, which of course is on the Roswell films that will hopefully be out by the end of the year. We'll see what happens with that. That's our goal. Out of Place Artifacts, number 8 in the Armor Trail of a Nephilim series. That's out. You can go to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net, or lamarzulli.net. Tim, thanks so much for coming on the record with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Folks, remember, UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. Thanks so much for watching.
Hi, Jingos. It's amazingly fresh and clean out here in beautiful New Zealand. G'day, America. I'm Tarby, and I want to tell you about my new ultimate stain and odour remover, Jingos. My Jingos gunk gobblers will tackle stubborn organic stains and eliminate nasty stinking odours at the same time. Jingos effectively removes those little accidents like wine, coffee, dirt, blood, grass, even pet stains, and odours like fish, garlic, even skunk. Jingos is environmentally friendly, safe for use on fabrics, carpet, upholstery, and it works great as a laundry pre-soak on the worst pet or people accidents. Come on, America, what are you waiting for? Just go online and order your Jingos for $12.95 and get a 4-ounce travel pack free. Crikey, pay $19.95 and I'll double your order. That's 2 large Jingos and 2 travel packs for just $19.95. Blasted seagulls, where's my Jingos?